I've been asked to speak about unemployment and why we have unemployment, and I'm just delighted to be part of your group. I wish I were there in person. It would have been better, but this is at least a good substitute for not being there. So why do we have unemployment? There are various reasons we have unemployment. Am I being understood? Am I speaking loud enough?
That's enough. We have strong loudspeakers.
Okay, good. There are various causes of unemployment. One of the causes of unemployment is if we subsidize unemployment. For example, we have in the United States a thing called unemployment insurance, which means if you're unemployed, the government gives you money. And if the government gives you money to be unemployed, we'll have more unemployment because supply curves slope upward, which means whenever you pay more for something, you'll get more of it. If we raise the price for oil, we'll get more oil. If we raise the price for shirts, we'll have more shirts. And if we raise the price for unemployment, we'll have more unemployment. In Canada, in eastern Canada, in the Atlantic part of Canada, they have very, very generous unemployment insurance, which means fishermen, mainly people fish for cod in eastern Canada. And if you fish for just 2 or 3 or 4 weeks, I'm not sure how many weeks, but very, very few weeks per year, they will pay you the whole year for unemployment, or it's in effect welfare. So what happens is a lot of Eastern Canadians just work 3 or 4 or 5 weeks a year, and the rest of the year they're idle or they work on the black market, and it's very inefficient, and you have a lot of unemployment because the government is paying people to be unemployed. Right now there's a debate in the United States. President Obama wants to increase the generosity of unemployment insurance, and the more he pays people to be unemployed, the more they'll be unemployed. So this is one cause of unemployment. Another cause of unemployment is raising wages above productivity levels. So what do I mean by productivity levels? Productivity levels, for example, if I come and work for your factory, and let's say your receipts are $10,000 an hour, it's a big factory, and now I come and I work, and your receipts, the amount of productivity that comes about because I'm now there is $10,006. So we attribute the extra $6, I hope you don't mind me using dollars, I don't know what the Serbian currency is, I'll just use what I'm comfortable speaking about.
It's okay.
So my productivity is $6 an hour. And in equilibrium in the market, my wages will tend to be $6 an hour, because if I'm paid more than $6 an hour, suppose I'm paid $10 an hour, well then the employer who hires me at $10 an hour will lose $4 an hour from hiring me, because he pays 10, he only gets 6 from me, he loses 4. If he keeps doing that, he's going to go broke. His competitors don't do that. So a $10 an hour wage will not last. On the other hand, if I'm worth $6 an hour and he's only paying me $2 an hour, somebody else will offer me $2.01 or $2.02 or $2.03. They'll bid for me until my wages go up. One example that I often use to illustrate this is that in Mexico, the wages are very, very low, but in California, the productivity of Mexican workers in California is much higher. So California farmers go down to Mexico and with trucks and buses and induce people to come up and pick crops in California, thus raising their wages higher than what they're getting in Mexico. So there's a tendency for wages to equal productivity, because if wages are different than productivity, as I said, there will be market forces in either direction, forcing the wages down to $6 an hour or up to $6 an hour. Well, right now in the United States, we have a minimum wage law of $7.25 an hour, which means that it doesn't mean that anyone has to hire anyone. It just means that if you hire someone, you have to pay him $7.25 an hour. But what incentive does an employer have to hire someone whose productivity is $6 an hour and pay him $7.25 when he'll lose $1.25 an hour? So you have very, very high unemployment rates for unskilled workers. And we have unemployment rate overall in the United States is something like, 8 or 10%. It keeps changing. But older people, say 25 or older, have a higher productivity than younger people, say people 16 years old till 25. So the unemployment rate for older people is much lower than the unemployment rate for younger people because of the minimum wage law. It's about double. The unemployment, black people have less skills than white people for various historical reasons. And the unemployment rate for black people is double for white people. So when you look at teenage blacks, the unemployment rate is roughly quadruple, 4 times as high. It's something like 40%. But the actual number is even higher because they only count you as unemployed if you're still seeking a job. But if you've been discouraged, it's called the discouraged worker phenomenon. If you're discouraged, you've been looking for jobs for weeks and months and you can't find any and you stop looking, well, you're no longer considered in the labor force, so you're no longer counted as unemployed. So if we were to count not only the unemployed but the discouraged worker people, the unemployment rate is just horrible. In France, in the Benelux, where the, I guess people from Algeria live, and they have a minimum wage in France also, you have a lot of teenage unemployment, and when teenagers are unemployed, they get into trouble, they burn cars, they burn tires. So this is another cause of unemployment. A lot of people think that the minimum wage law is like a floor under wages, and the higher the minimum wage is, the higher wages will be, but that's the wrong analogy. The correct analogy would be that the minimum wage law is like a barrier over which you have to jump in order to get a job, and the higher it is, the harder it is to jump over the minimum wage to get a job. So they're thinking of raising the minimum wage from $7.25 to, I don't know, $9 or $10 or even $15 or $12 an hour, which means that people now who have a job, who say have productivity of $9 an hour at a minimum wage of $7.25, well, when the minimum wage goes up to 12 or 15 and your productivity is only $9 an hour, you're going to be unemployed. So the unemployment rate is going to rise very, very radically if they raise this minimum wage law. Okay, so that's the second source of minimum wage, the second source of unemployment. A third source of unemployment is unions, organized labor. What happens is that the union feels very powerful and they want to raise wages, and if they raise wages above their productivity levels, then there will be a loss. The employer will lose money. For example, Detroit in the United States is a basket case. It's a horrible situation. There's vast unemployment in Detroit. People are leaving Detroit. Detroit is bankrupt. Detroit has got a lot of problems. Why? One of the main reasons is because it's very heavily unionized. Those union workers were making something like $75 an hour, which is a pretty high salary when you count fringe benefits, not just the monetary wages, but also the I don't know, the vacations and medical insurance and things like that. They were making $75 an hour, and their productivity was much less than that, and that's why the big three auto companies in the United States, Ford and General Motors and Chrysler, were going broke. And that's why they had to bail out these companies. The government had to bail out, give them subsidies to keep them in business, which was foolish. A lot of times what these companies now do is they go down to places like Tennessee or Arkansas or, I don't know, Georgia, Alabama, places like that. And there, automobile workers who work on the line make, I don't know, $15 or $20 or $25 an hour, much, much less than $75 an hour. We have in the United States this expression called Rust Belt. Rust Belt means the whole northeast part of the country is impoverished to a great degree because unionism was focused in the United States in the northeast corner of the country. Whenever you raise wages above productivity levels, whether it's a minimum wage or unions, it doesn't matter. The result is unemployment. So we now have three causes of unemployment: unemployment insurance, minimum wage, and unions. Let me talk about two more causes of unemployment, and then maybe I'll consider a few objections to what I've just been saying, and then we'll have some questions. The next reason for unemployment is a thing called the Austrian business cycle theory. What is the Austrian business cycle theory? The Austrian is very different than Keynesianism. Keynes is the majority of economists believe in Keynesian or monetarist theory. Austrian theory is very different. What it says is that when the Fed, or the central bank, lowers interest rates, what it does is not only induce but subsidize entrepreneurs into making investments that they shouldn't be making, that are really malinvestments, that are not proper investments. See, what really determines how much and what kind of investments we have, how much basic industries we should have and how much consumer industries we should have, is the interest rate. And the interest rate, from the Austrian point of view, emanates from the saving and consumption decisions of the people, which emanates from a thing called time preference. Some people are very impatient and they don't save much, they consume a lot, and then you'd have a high interest rate, and other people are more patient and they have a lower time preference, and they save more for a rainy day, and a country like that can afford to have more basic heavy industry, whereas a country where people are very impatient, then you can't have too much heavy industry. And any given country would be an amalgamation of both kinds of people and all kinds of people in terms of their preferences.